You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Today, as I went through the news headlines, I saw one that stuck right out at me. Medical marijuana for kids? Some praise results, while others worry about risks. Of course, you know our history. We're good friends with brave Michaela, the 7-year-old, and now 8-year-old, who's beating leukemia through her use of cannabis. We also know of Jeremy Eccles, who is the young autistic boy who's working. His father's working to help his symptoms. We talked to Miko Hester Perez, whose son Joey had an autistic disorder that was aided by medical cannabis, and yet there's news agencies out there that can't help but try to make this a scary controversy out there. And today we're going to focus on NBC News. As you can see right there in the video window, we got Brian Williams. This was on last night's NBC Nightly News, and I'll pause it occasionally for some commentary.
We are back with a medical treatment for children that parents say they know is controversial, yet many of them say it happens to work for their children. Some parents have come to embrace the use of medical marijuana to treat a number of conditions, and now some doctors are expressing real concerns. We get the story tonight from our chief medical editor, Dr. Nancy Snyderman.
Peroni's.
When Zakai Jackson was 6 months old, he was diagnosed with a form of epilepsy that causes life-threatening seizures.
He was having 60 to 250 seizures a day.
After 10 years and 17 medications, his mom, Heather, made a tough and controversial decision to give her son marijuana.
Despite the stigma associated with cannabis, we really owed it to Zakai to give it a try.
The first night she gave Zakai a liquid form of medical marijuana, she says the change was immediate and lasting.
The seizure activity was down. He started pumping his legs on the swing, which is something he was 9 years old, and you teach your children that from the time they're 3, and he just never could get it.
It's really good medicine. Their lives are completely changed.
In 17 states, including Colorado, where Zakai lives, kids are able to get medical marijuana by prescription to treat everything from autism to cancer to seizures. Because growers can now breed the plants with low levels of the substance THC, experts say these kids are getting just the medicinal benefits and not the high. Still,
now, I want to stop on that for just a second, because that's one of the focuses they have on all of these points is, worrying about whether the kids would get high on the medical marijuana. First of all, the amounts that are being given to these kids are not those that are going to be, couch lock, Harold and Kumar type amounts of medical marijuana. And second of all, they're being giving them high CBD strains. But what if the kid did experience a little euphoria? Oh no, the trouble that we would experience from that. From a kid who's been battling an epileptic disorder, 60 to 250 seizures a day for 10 years, all 10 years of his life, heaven forbid he might feel some euphoria.
Some critics say marijuana used therapeutically could also be a gateway to other drugs.
What? Really? We're going to argue gateway drug on a kid who's using some Rick Simpson oil or cannabis oil. Because, if he uses that, the next thing you know, he'll be out in the alleyway trying to score some meth. Who thinks of this stuff? Do they really believe that a kid using cannabis as medicine, instead of the other 17 pharmaceuticals that they tried, why do the other 17 pharmaceuticals not become the gateway to using other drugs? Oh, yeah, that's right. Because they make big pharma profits.
The American Academy of Pediatrics is opposed to marijuana because it has not been clinically tested nor approved by the FDA.
Using marijuana as a medication is jumping the gun because we really don't know what the side effects and long-term consequences of marijuana are on particularly children.
We do know what the side effects and complications and short-term immediate effects are of a child having 60 to 250 epileptic seizures a day. You're worried about some potential long-term effects? Let's look at Tommy Chong. Let's look at Dr. Lester Grinspoon. Let's look at Willie Nelson in their 70s and 80s. Ask them a few questions about the long-term effects. Really? You're worried about whether or not they might move on to heroin or have some, I don't know, amotivational syndrome in their 20s when it's a 10-year-old child battling epilepsy and nothing else works? Do you people really listen to the words coming out of your mouth?
Spoke to a mom whose child suffered from seizure disorders, and she's tried everything, and marijuana works.
I worry that we just don't know enough about it.
We don't know enough about it. We don't know enough about marijuana. Gosh, it's only been around for 5,000 years. It's only been used medicinally for thousands and thousands of years. We've only had millions and millions of people that have been using it as medicine for these thousands of years, and we've only got 17 to 19,000 published peer-reviewed studies on the medical efficacy of cannabinoids. But we just don't know enough about it.
Generations ago, people were recommending tobacco. Even physicians were recommending tobacco as a good method of relaxation or to relieve stress. It seems unbelievable now.
Right. Because doctors in the 50s who were paid off by tobacco companies to endorse cigarettes once claimed they had medical value. The thousands of years of medical value we've seen from cannabis and the, again, 17 to 19,000 peer-reviewed studies in PubMed available through the U.S. government's own database, that we can ignore that because, gosh, they might be lying about it. This mom might be lying about her 10-year-old getting any medical benefit from this. You know, gosh, just a few decades ago, they lied about tobacco. These moms must be lying about it. This kid, they must have coached this kid to somehow control his seizures after they give him the cannabis, so it didn't look bad, right? Is that really what you want to go with? That's really what you want to stand on?
But Heather says she has all the proof she needs.
Medical marijuana is definitely saving Zakai's life. It's saving his life, and it's giving him a better quality of life.
Regardless of where you stand, no one is arguing that marijuana or cannabis should be a first-line drug of choice.
Wait a minute. I am. I will argue that every day. This woman went 10 years without a son. 10 years where she's completely emotionally and intellectually disconnected from her son because the kid can't go long enough without a seizure to even have human contact. 60 to 250 seizures a day. 17 different medications to control epilepsy, none of which worked, and all of which have a list of side effects longer than my arm. And we want to say those are the first options for our kids? Those are the first things we should try. You should have to go through 10 years, a decade of trying everything pharmaceutical profitable science has to offer, and then we might let you use the pot, but only if it's low THC. We can't have the kids getting high. We wouldn't want to have that terrible side effect. Dr. Snyderman, please do some research on medical cannabis. You're embarrassing yourself as a medical professional.
But when all efforts have been exhausted and parents are really frustrated and have nowhere else to turn, increasingly the medical community and parents are looking to this as a last-ditch effort, and it comes down to quality of life, Brian.
Well, you can tell this debate is just getting started.
With 17 states saying, okay, you bet it's on the roll.
Dr. Nancy
All right,
Snyderman,
now this is
always.
the NBC Nightly News. Now, what follows next is the same story, basically,
now
but covered this
with
morning
the
on the NBC Today show. Check out how they use some of the same film clips about the same kid, and they add a few extras. But notice how the framing changes a little for the morning audience, for those moms getting their kids ready for school. You'll pick it out pretty easy. You won't even need my help.
Controversy tied to medical marijuana. It is legal now in 17 states, and now some parents are using it to treat their very young children. Dr. Nancy Snyderman is NBC's chief medical editor. Nancy, good morning to you.
Hey, Savannah, we've talked about medical marijuana for adults for a long time, but increasingly doctors, parents, and communities are getting behind this for children. It is a controversy that is not going to go away. This mother is making a drug deal, buying marijuana.
Is this the aroma oil for you today?
Yes. But this sale is not for her. It's for her 10-year-old son, and it's all perfectly legal. This pot is being grown specifically for Zakai Jackson in Colorado by a team of brothers who legally grow medical marijuana and process it for him into a special syrup for sale at their drugstore. Heather Jackson says this dope is saving her son's life. When Zakai was 6,
this mother is making a drug deal, but this dope is saving the kid's life. Wow. It's 2013. Over 1/3 of the states in the United States, covering about 40% of the U.S. population, have all come to a long, contentious argument over the past 16 years about the medical use of a cannabis plant that's been beneficial to mankind in myriad ways for thousands of years. And you still want to use framing from the 50s. You still want to say dope. You still want to say drug deals. Oh, my goodness. It just gets worse. Enjoy.
6 months old, he was diagnosed with a form of epilepsy that causes life-threatening seizures.
Very nice. He was having 60 to 250 seizures a day. He would stop breathing. All the air leaves his lungs, and he does not take another breath until that seizure is over.
She says she tried 17 medications and treatments. Nothing worked. Desperate, Heather made a tough decision to try one last doctor's recommendation.
We are Christians, we are conservative, and we're using medical marijuana. So that's kind of a big hump for people.
And it shouldn't be. That's what's really bothering me about this story, is that I believe this mom thinks of this as a last resort. I believe this mom really was tortured with having to get involved in the marijuana culture, in the subculture, even in a state like Colorado, where even before 2000, when they passed medical marijuana, was very accepting of marijuana, and now has legalized marijuana. And even despite all that, all this cultural brainwashing and propaganda from our government and threats and intimidation and incarceration have all acted to put this woman in such a place where her son had to be tortured, had to suffer for 10 years when there was something available from nature right there all that time that could have helped him.
To get over it.
Heather says the results were immediate.
I probably stared at him for a good 3 hours after his first dose, and then I fell asleep. I didn't feel any seizures after his very first dose.
He has been seizure-free for 9 months. In 17 states, kids are able to get medical marijuana to treat everything from autism to cancer to seizures.
Their lives are completely changed. They can eat, they can put on weight, they can sleep, they can actually have a normal childhood.
Dr. Getty says that the marijuana plant, also known as cannabis, can dial down nerve cell stimulation and stop seizures without getting kids stoned. And that's because medical marijuana can be bred with a low level of THC, the compound that gets you high. But critics include the American Academy of Pediatrics, which says that growers are jumping the gun because this remedy has not been clinically tested.
It's not enough just to believe that something is going to be a good medication. You really need to test it. A couple of generations ago, people were recommending tobacco. Even physicians were recommending tobacco as a good method of relaxation or to relieve stress.
Yeah, once again, the old tobacco thing. And we're jumping the gun. When that kid who was seizing 60 to 250 times a day, when he was doing that for 10 years straight, and then he used cannabis, and he's been seizure-free for 9 months, we're jumping the gun. We haven't really clinically tested that this is really actually working. Our eyes must be fooling us. You're so full of crap, doctor, your eyes are brown. Hey, that's all the time we got. For Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show.